So I have notes for this presentation. I'll toggle between my notes and Unity, and the notes are titled notes under today's date. So it's a pretty heavy set of files. Most of the space is what takes up the most is the library, which I assume has most of the engine in it. It doesn't automatically save, so you have to remember to save as you go along. And so these are things that I thought were useful from the Unity Essentials, like manipulating the camera, being able to change the view of the camera. Then there's the lights. So if maybe I'll try to move quickly through this. So I'm gonna add a 3D object and just have it. Last time I think I used a plane. This time I'll use a cube. I'll call it ground. And I'll have it be 100 by 100 meters, keeping the Y coordinate just at 1 meter, because it doesn't need, unless I want to dig into it and go into the ground, I'll just leave it as that. I'll create a couple walls just to, and I think I did this last week, but wall 0, 1, and scale it 5 on the X and 5 on the Y, and bring it above ground. And I'll duplicate that. So what I'm going to do here, the reason I'm doing this is just to have something to look at when I play around with when I play around with camera and lights. So I'll rename this wall 2 and rotate it negative. Nope. I'm just going to use the rotation tool. Do negative 90. There's many ways to, right now I'm just holding the Option key and roving around. I can also use this widget to look from whichever direction. All right, so last week I didn't point this out, but so right now I cleared everything out, and it's just it has scenes. I created a scene for this and settings, and if we decide to reset the camera, I can turn on the camera view down here. Just to get a sense of what the camera is looking at. Every game object has its own properties that are available in the inspector. So for example, field of view. If I want to have a wider field of view, I can pull that out versus something much closer. I'll set it to 90. And so if I were creating a world or a room or an environment that I was wanted to generate a still from, for example, I can, with the camera selected, I can go to game object and align with view. And now it sets the camera to that perspective, to wherever it is. So that when I hit play, I'm gonna be way out here instead of where I had it. That can be pretty handy when you're creating documentation or stills. There's also, if I hold down the right click and use WASD, I can just move around in the environment. I'll reset it. Last week I brought in an image. It was I'll bring something I found what looked like an AI created Carretanagua. So I'll bring that in. So right now, ideally, if I'm being organized, I would create a folder called textures. I would put any textures inside that folder just to organize things. Wherever that was sitting, it's created a duplicate within the assets folder. So in order to not have all these duplicates, I will usually try to save everything inside my assets folder. So if I'm downloading images, I'll just go ahead and save it directly into Unity. And that way I don't have like a copy in my downloads folder and then another copy in my project folder. So right now there's only these two scenes and settings, but if I drag this image onto one of these walls, it automatically creates a folder called materials. So materials is the data package that is well, if I double click on it, you can see that the base map is the image itself. And then if I, were to generate a metallic map or a normal map or a height map, all of those elements I could add to this new material. So say for example, and this is if in the Unity Essentials, it covers creating a bouncy ball. So if before I do that, what I wanted to point out is grouping things using the create empty I'll call this room and put my two walls inside of room. And this way I can just select room and manipulate these two walls as one object. So anytime that you're if you're creating an environment that you want to work and change as one unit, then just make sure to nest it all within an empty game object. So if I create a 3D sphere, and not sure where it is. And in my materials, I create a new material that's just going to be a color. I'll call it red_. MAT for material, and then change the base map to red. And I can apply it directly to my sphere, and then it will no longer be that default gray. So primitives will have these default, besides the transforms, a sphere mesh filter, a mesh render, and a sphere collider. I can decide how it behaves based on a physical material. So if I save this, test it now, it'll just be this red sphere that doesn't have gravity or anything. It's just sitting there. So in order to start making use of the physics engine built into Unity, I will add a rigid body. So you can add any number of components. You can write your own scripts and add as components to your game objects. With a rigid body, gravity will be applied to it, so it'll fall to the ground. And I'm going to turn off this. If I, in my materials, go and create a physics material, I'll call it bounce. And the parameters here, if I, on anything in the inspector, you can hover it over it and you'll get a tip. How bouncy the collider surface is, defined by how much speed the other collider retains after collision, range 0 to 1. So it's just a floating number value. So I'll put it as high as it goes I'll put it at 1. And I won't do anything. I could add some sort of bounce to the ground so that, like springs under a basketball court or something like that. But I'll leave it as is, and I'll go ahead and, oh wait, I didn't add it. I have to add it to the ball. So this is a different type of material. So if I go to the sphere collider, there is a material option here, reference to the physics material that determines how this collider interacts with others. So I'm just going to drag this bounce, this physics material to the sphere's collider. And now it should have a small bounce to it. Now, say I was making something that I wanted tons of balls, then I would go into assets, and I'll create a folder called prefab. So a prefab is any game object that you want to script to or that will be used over and over and over. So if you're creating coins and they're going to be collected by the player, then those coins should be a prefab. And it just keeps the project a lot smaller because all of the repeated coins are based on one piece of data. So a quick way to create a prefab is once you've got what's going to be the prefab, once you have it all set up as you want it, you can also always go back and keep editing it. But say you have pretty much set up, you're happy with it, then when you drag it into the project folder or the assets, it will automatically change this game object. It'll make the icon blue, which identifies or visually tells you that that's a prefab. You can double click into it. And if you want to edit the prefab, like say, instead of red, I want to make it blue, then any changes to the prefab will dynamically change all the prefabs that are based on it that you put into your environment. And you just treat it as another element to your environment. So, yeah, think about prefabs are pretty powerful because you're able to add 100 and it's not going to cost you so much regarding the CPU and how well it runs. Let's see. Okay, so getting back to materials. If I want to create a new material, I'll call it brains _mat. I have it linked in here. Textures.com and clicked free. And I grabbed this one. So you have to create an account with them to download the materials, but you can see that it gives me options of up to 2048 by 2048, which is pretty decent. And it gives me the albedo, which is the base, height map, normal map, roughness, and occlusion. So I already pulled these. Yeah. Yeah, sounds right. So I'm going to apply these to my new. So the base is albedo. I think the metallic is this roughness. The normal map is the one that texture is not marked as a normal map. Am I doing the wrong one? No, that's the normal. So I'll fix now. And this should be the height map. And oh no. Oh, the occlusion is the lightest one.
Things, so it's not like maybe occlusion usually refer to like something that like that blue on the shadow, like if you turned it off, if you turned off the it would just be black.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna apply it to this wall and see what this looks like. Um, okay, that's kind of, that looks. So I could use it for the entire ground as texture. But it's, so the main thing I wanted to point out is that there's these free resources and you can start having a lot of fun with what you create. And in my notes, I included links. So the directional light, consider it like the sun of the project of your project. If you change the direction, if you rotate it, it's gonna change the shadow. You can change the color if you want your project to feel like there's forest fires going on in Jersey. Maybe I'll go with a red. So everything is, like anything, it's just a matter of digging into all the different properties of each of the different types of game objects and messing with them, seeing what you can create. Let's see. What else? Talked about materials, physics material. Okay, so I'm gonna download a free package from Unity. It's their first-person controller. That link should take us to the asset store. So this was recently updated for Unity 6. And I've already here, if I hadn't have downloaded it, it would be download to a button to download it, but I already have it, so I can open it in Unity and I'll import it into my project. So this is the package in Windows. You can find Package Manager, and this is where all the packages that you've downloaded are organized, and you can install upgrade. So I'll go ahead and I want to set up a first-person controller using this package manager. I'll switch over to my notes. So, okay, so this import Unity package will have all of the stuff, sounds, art, everything that's included in this package. And any project that you create, you can export as a package and make it available for other people to download. So I'll just go ahead and import all of this. I can close my package manager for now. Or not. So what I'm going to do is apply the first-person controller to the scene. And it's all in the prefabs. There's main camera, player follow camera, player capsule. So the player's going to be represented as a capsule. You can replace that with a character. Player capsule contains player camera root and capsule collider. Player follow camera has a Cinema Machine virtual camera component with a follow property, so I'll need to add the player camera root to the follow property of the player follow camera. So I will go into assets and find my starter asset, go to first-person controller, go to the prefabs, and load into my scene my main camera. Player follow and player controller. So player capsule has player camera root and capsule. So this player follow camera, it has this follow variable, public input. And so this is where I want to drag in my player camera root. So it knows what to follow. I'm going to create an empty and call it player rig and put all three of these in there so I can have them all grouped. All right. So I want this to be my new camera. So I'm going to go to main camera and just turn that off. And I'm going to go to player rig and you can tag all your game objects. So a default tag that's already set up here is player. So when you get to scripting things, you can target things by whatever they're tagged. And if I play this now, where's my room? I really like my brains. So that's kind of cool. To Yeah, I could turn down the metallic quality. Yeah, you guys probably know more about materials than I do, but I just kind of go ad hoc. All right, so I've got a functioning player controller. I can look around, I can walk and move around this world. So, oh, so Cinemachine, this is, if I go to the main camera, it has this Cinemachine brain, and it has a lot more properties that you can manipulate to use this camera. You can also have like program cameras that automatically will move around the environment. And oh, also in the starter assets, there is there's a scene that's like a playground scene, and there's staircases. So there's elements that want to go to the scene because it's a good it's a good way to get to familiarize yourself with setting up this player controller is by just looking at their example. But for the sake of time, I'm not gonna open that right now. All right, so I'm gonna create I'm gonna delete the ground that I have now, which is just a cube. And it would send, if I put player right now, the player and the balls would just keep falling into infinity. So I'm going to go to 3D object and I'm going to create a terrain. Terrains are always set. I'll call this ground instead. And terrains always expand from the 0, 0 coordinate. And they're like they're huge. They're like 2,000 by 2,000 meters. And they come with a whole set of properties. So rather than keeping my room, my game elements and the player controller at the edge of this world, I'm just gonna move them out. I'll, yeah, I'm just scrolling. Okay, so the terrain comes with a whole set of properties that you can build mountains and so I'm going to work with it for a little bit with the remaining 6 minutes. And in order to not mess anything up, there's a padlock in up to the right of the inspector. And I'm going to lock it so I don't affect anything else except what I'm so let's see. I'm going to go to raise and lower terrains. So there's different options to work with it. Create neighbor terrains, paint terrain, paint trees, paint details such as grass and flowers. There's terrain settings. And right now I just switched to raise and lower terrain. So there's these brushes that I can use. Whoa. You can try the different brushes and see, like, you can also change the opacity is how strong. Let's see. You can change the brush size. And the opacity is the height, I think. And how quickly, like, I'm going to bring that down. Yeah. I went to the hierarchy and I went to 3D objects and chose terrain. Yep. You can also smooth it. You can paint holes, which is kind of cool. So like if is it doing it? Oh, there. I think I brought down the pressure too low. So if you were creating one terrain and then putting another plane or plateau or a secret room and there's a hole, then your character will fall into it. You see what happens if I go to raise or lower terrains, stamp terrains, paint texture, and you can add layers to so you say you're creating a terrain that's going to be rock and then soil, and then the peaks are going to have snow. You can give each of those materials their own layers so that they interact with one another. What does this look like? Oh, this is,
It's all brain.
yeah, I used a brain as the material to, but it gave me it only gave me the option for the base. So it's just not gonna have, it doesn't have the depth. Yeah, so this is the wall, right? It looks a lot, the terrain looks pretty flat, so, I don't remember how to. uh, I wanna get higher. Um, anyway, so the terrain's, it's a pretty powerful tool that, um, yeah, you can give a lot of, um, you can add water, and there's freely available waters. I'm gonna see what happens if I go in here. Yeah, so I'm falling, there's my terrain up there, there's my room. Okay. Um. To do what, to bring it into Blender or Maya or what?
Well, let's say you wanted to do something with the. It's an object.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what else you can see.
Probably.
Yeah, I don't know how you would. Like you're talking about, like if you built a room in Unity and you wanna put it in.
Could export the asset. It's different from, like you could export, you don't see that.
Can you? I don't know, I've never tried. Something to look into. So in my notes, there's a lot more information. Textures should be divisible by 2. And I have some notes here that, if you're like, for something that looks like PlayStation 1 at 2048 by 2048 is gonna be plenty. This goes into each of the different components that make up a material, and read about them. Height maps versus normal map, the base map, the albedo, and I linked just more sites that have a lot more information. If you want to look into why to use each one of these. And for PlayStation, for the, yeah.
Or maybe it's type of point, it's just like. Flash, right? The color shadows, those things are happening. Yeah, we're expecting it. I think
So I included more information about the terrain, but we can also like pick up on that next week. I didn't talk about Skybox. So by default, when you create a scene, it has a procedural skybox, but you can create your own six-sided skybox, which, you know, it's basically a cube that folds in on itself. And it could be something that, it could be anything you want. Like it could be purely textual, it could be whatever crazy thing you want. You can create it in Photoshop and then import it into Unity. And it's another type of material. So if in my materials, I create another material, I'll call it, say Skybox 1. And, oh, I have this locked. So if I select my new material that I called Skybox 1 in its inspector, there's a skybox options, and I can have it be a six-sided. So whatever image, they all have to, all the pieces have to be square, and you drag them into these boxes, back, left, right, up, down, and then you can apply this skybox to your world. You can also create a procedural skybox. I'll change, again, the colors. And if I want to just add it to this world, I can just go ahead and drag it. And now I've got this violet